Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, is Jim MacDonald, aka Big Jim Mac. How you doing this morning, Jim?
Things are good. Things are good here. It's evening in beautiful Montreal, but I'm happy
That's
to be with
right.
you no matter what time of day it is.
It's funny, every time I talk to someone on the other side of the world, it was only the other day, I was talking to someone in the UK, and we spoke my morning to do something with one of their shows that they were doing. Then later that afternoon, I was talking to them again, and they were laughing, going, "You haven't gone to bed yet, have you?" I went, "No." I said, "Because it was early morning for me. Now it's evening." So it's funny. I love time zones. It confuses some people, but I have this app. If anybody is looking for a cool app to always know what is, and this app is not sponsoring the podcast, it is just called Time Buddy. It's a couple of dollars. You can put in all the different time zones in there, and you never get confused.
I'll take a look at that.
It is cool. So what are we talking about today?
So today we're going to talk about, I don't think enough podiatrists know about kind of the market demographics in their local areas. So the title of today's podcast is "Your Market is Telling You What It Wants, but Are You Listening?" Because, like I said, most podiatrists are sitting on additional revenue they don't even know exists. Not because they can't offer services, but because they never looked at the data to tell them exactly what their market wants and what they're willing to pay out of pocket. So, the majority of marketing companies kind of manage an online presence, that aren't kind of doing their homework either. So they're running the same kind of generic playbook for, let's say, a practice in downtown Miami as they are for a practice in rural Ohio. So demographics, local demand, income levels, these are things that can really change the way that people market their practice. And I think it's something that clinics need to be more aware of when you're working with someone that's, promoting and marketing your practice.
Yeah, demographics are really important. I've seen a lot of businesses, especially we're in Cairns, up in the tropics. So how our lifestyle here is completely different. And sometimes you'll see companies from down south, might be wintertime, they're promoting or doing something, yet they're running those same campaigns up here. And we're going, yeah, it's hot. It's hot at the moment. Yes, it's winter, but it's still hot. We don't put on big jumpers and hoodies or anything like that. And so I think it's really important for companies to be aware of where they are, how you market one area. And that's why you shouldn't just copy what somebody else is doing either.
No, absolutely. Like each location has its own kind of the way they refer to their town, they refer to certain things, the neighborhoods, those, the way you're gonna market in one place is significantly different than another. So like you said, you don't want to just copy paste your strategy from one place to the other. Even if you're a clinic owner in two different places, there's going to be maybe two different ways that you approach those local areas. So today we're going to cover, how to use data that's already accessible. I don't know what it's like in Australia and even in Canada, it's a little bit more restricted, but in the US, every 10 years they have a census. So like you get a
Yeah.
lot of rich demographic information that some people never really even look at. And marketers really should look at it. Podiatry clinic owners should look at it because it's going to uncover and help you capture demand that's maybe hiding in that local market. So that's kind of what we're going to jump into today.
Yeah. No, I can't remember when our census comes out. Is it every 5 years? Maybe it's every 10 years. I could be 10 years. I don't pay enough attention to it. But I do recall using that information when I set up my first clinic on the Gold Coast. I went and got all the latest data, whatever was available, and I went right through it. And that was how I picked my locations and the type of services I was going to use.
That's super, super important.
So where do you start? Well, where should the people listening to this, where should they start?
Yeah, so they should start by knowing their market demographics because, like I said, some marketing companies they're not really interested in kind of digging that deep and being that tactical. So most marketing companies will build you a nice website, run some ads, never once look at actually who lives in your zip code. So, they don't know the median household income around your practice. They don't know the age distribution. They don't know whether your area has high percentage of active retirees willing to spend, money on maybe laser therapy or shockwave, or maybe you're in an area with a lot of young professionals searching for custom orthotics because they're really into marathon training. When you actually can pull the census data and cross-reference it with, the high-paying services you have in your clinic, you might find some gaps you never knew existed. So that's really kind of where additional revenue and where additional kind of some additional freedom might be lurking there inside the practice.
Yeah, you might find you've set your practice up in the wrong place too.
Yeah, you might be up for a rude awakening, huh? To like, oh my gosh, I should have been 1 mile over in this zip code or this postal code as opposed to where I am now. But yeah, that could be definitely a rude awakening.
Yeah, but that's really important because when I first set up in Cairns, I originally set up in this road called Two Good Road, and it was in a suburb called Warree. Well, I thought it was a suburb called Warree of Cairns, but no, Warree and Cairns were two distinct different areas. So when people would search podiatrists in Cairns, I would never appear because I was 500 meters away from the Cairns. And it didn't click to me till I was driving down the road and saw, welcome to Cairns. And I went, this is why I'm not appearing. So I deliberately ended up moving my clinic about a kilometre into the Cairns area. And where I moved my clinic was a terrible location. Oh, it was a great location to be found, but demographic-wise was not a great location. But Cairns overall, demographics is. So I think this is where you're talking about where you need to understand your area and the community.
No, absolutely. I think you're on point there, right? If there's a smaller suburb, or maybe it's even a nicer demographic, but it doesn't have the same pull as like, name a big city podiatrist. Like you wouldn't show up for it because you're not actually physically located in that zip code or in that town. So it's really, really important. Like I mentioned, one of the benefits of, like, at least in the US, is that there's a website called census.gov that gives income, age, insurance coverage by zip code. And this is free data for most practices, and their marketing companies don't always touch it. So that stuff is not only is it available on those websites, but now utilizing things like ChatGPT or Claude, you can really like say, I am located in, let's say we're in Webster Groves, Missouri. That's where I'm located. And then you can say, what are the demographics in the higher, income households within 10 or 15 minutes of Webster Groves? And you can get a list of that stuff and kind of get a sense of like, well, if I'm trying to do some fee for service, types of procedures or treatments, you have a better sense of maybe where you're going to want to put some of your marketing spend as opposed to 10-mile radius around your clinic and just hope people show up at your door.
Did you say that service was free in the States or did you have to pay for that information?
Yeah, that's what's crazy about the States. So like things like census data is totally free. Also,
Okay.
like in the US, you can figure out what someone paid for a house like on your street, and you can see the purchase price of homes. One of the things that's been frustrating here in Canada, they don't that stuff is something you have to pay a realtor for. That's kind of hidden behind different, paywalls, which is, when you're looking for a house and wondering how much your house or houses in your neighborhood have gone up in price, you basically have to either ask somebody or pay a realtor to find out that information.
Yeah, I know we can find out the purchase price of different properties, the history of every time it's been sold. You can readily get that information.
That's good. That's good that it happens in Australia. 'Cause like I said, it's a little bit trickier here in Canada for that. And one of the things that's important about it is, cross-referencing these demographics, right? So knowing which of your different treatment modalities, really appeal to 55 plus, whether that's maybe shockwave or some laser, they're candidates for that, or your young professionals. Like, how are you gonna market to make sure that if they have sports injuries, if they're training for marathons, if they need orthotics, is your marketing fitting the demographics of your local area? That's super important because your current patients reflect kind of your current marketing, not necessarily your actual market opportunity. So if you want to know what that market opportunity is, you have to do a little bit of diligence, you or the marketing provider you're working with.
Yeah, and this is why going way back, and you've said this numerous times, why you need to really sort of investigate if you're working with a marketing company, you really need to do your homework on them and probably get examples of work that they've done before, because that'll give you an idea whether they're tailoring things to different areas or are they just dumping the same images and the same ads for multiple podiatrists in different areas.
Absolutely. Are they your marketing partner where they're going to like really try to go into a strategy and tactics with you to do something that's custom in a way that's going to be effective? Or are they just like, you're just another number to them where they're going to give you a $500 website and $1,000 worth of Google ads and just call it a day, right? So you really need to know that. And, another thing that we talked about previously that kind of builds into this is that website should have local pages that match kind of the search intent of these patients in the local area. If someone in your area Googles, laser toenail fungus treatment near me or custom orthotics in the name of your city, does your website have a dedicated page for that service in that location? For most practices, the answer is no. You might have a generic services page that mentions laser therapy in a bullet point, but that's not going to rank. Google wants to see specific relevant pages. And the real kicker is these kind of higher revenues searches that people are doing often have less competition than things like podiatrists near me, which is a bit more general, because big hospital systems aren't kind of building pages for these more specific terms. That's a big opening for private practices to build those things out and to attract those patients.
And when you're saying a dedicated page, you're talking about somebody searching something, they click on it, it goes to a page in your website, and the only thing that's on that page that you're really talking about is that service that they look for. You haven't got things flashing on the side that's totally distracting or 15 different other topics. It's really, I want to know about nail fungus. That page is nail fungus.
Absolutely. I think it's 2026 and I still see some websites that were built in a way that where there's about 20 or 30 different diagnoses and treatments on the same web page. And that is confusing to Google. Like if you're trying to get, bunion patients or you're trying to get orthotic patients and that's on the same page, those two diagnoses and treatments are on the same page. It doesn't see you as an expert. It sees you as just a jumble of text where you have those 20 or 30 different diagnoses and treatments. You really need to be specific and include plain language descriptions that are written in the language that a patient will understand and knowing who it's for, right? And what they can expect. Pricing is becoming even more of a thing. I think the more people can be more transparent about pricing, especially when it comes to cash pay, related stuff, or even, if the people decide that they would prefer not to utilize their deductible, knowing what a office visit would cost and different types of treatments for different types of diagnoses can be a real benefit to the patient. And I think a lot of web searches, can benefit because it's helpful information for patients potentially.
And there is nothing more frustrating when you click on a link, it goes through to a page that you're expecting the information to be right in front of you. And all of a sudden, you've got to start searching through that page. Hang on, I'm looking for nail fungus. And you got to look, and all of a sudden, you can't find it. And it just puts you off of that business almost immediately. And then you go back to that link, you just click on the next one. And if it takes you straight to a page, that's what you're going to do, or that's where you're going to follow.
Yeah, people want to get information immediately, right? They don't want to play hide and seek. They don't want to have to search for 5 minutes to try to find out that information. They're just going to back out. We're very impatient.
You're so impatient.
But if they find you, they want to find the solution to their problem, right? And if you can't do that for them, they're going to go somewhere else. And like we talked about, these specific pages are really important as well because bigger groups and bigger hospital systems, it's going to be very rare that they have pages built out for these more elective or high revenue potential, treatments to be done. So there's going to be less competition. You can rank faster for these things. So it's a real opening for private practices.
That's great. So what's next?
I'd say, what you want to do is you want to mine your own patient data for these different opportunities that are already kind of, in your chair. So you don't always need to go find new patients for kind of cash pay or, fee for service revenue. The opportunity is already sitting kind of in your exam room. How do patients come for a diabetic foot exam or routine nail care? And they have no idea you do these other types of services, right? Like that you have orthotics, that you have shockwave, you maybe have diabetic shoes in your practice. If your answer is most of them, then that's not a patient problem. That's probably more of a systems problem in your clinic. So your intake forms, your EMR data, and your follow-up workflows should be feeding you information about which patients are candidates for these additional services in your clinic, providing them just better care. So most practices never set these things up, unfortunately.
Yeah, and when you're saying mine your own patient data, that's MINE, not MIND. Not
Yeah,
mind.
mine as in
Your own patient data. It's mine.
digging down
It's like
into the earth.
dig down. Yeah, because when you first said that, I said mind, and then I realized because I have the notes in front of me or some of your dot points, I saw the mining, and I'm thinking, aha, people understood what you're talking about. It's dig down into the patient data that you have there and get to learn more about them and what other services they can use. And I've told you before, I've had patients that would used to come to my clinic. We would do orthotics for them. Then I would notice they need routine foot care. I would say, hey, we can book you back in to get it looked after with one of the other people that work with us. Oh no, that's okay. My podiatrist looks after that. And I'm like, huh? You got a podiatrist, but you came here for orthotics? Oh yeah, no, she's not qualified to do these. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. The person she was talking about was in my year at uni. I know she was well and truly qualified to make orthotics, but never told the patient that she did them. So if she had mined a little bit and sort of dug down and said, well, looking at the patients who could have foot pain, who could benefit from orthotics, it's just money walking out the door.
Absolutely. It's about educating the patient at the end of the day, right? So, whether you see them in the chair, you just realize from some EMR reports that you pull, there's other opportunities to treat the patient more fully. Sometimes that's with shockwave, sometimes it's treating their fungal nails, sometimes it's, orthotics. Even like a 10 or 15%, conversion on some of these in chair, if you present them some opportunities to get better more quickly, you know, 3 yeses per week at like $500 is potentially 6K per month, in patients that you're already seeing. So people should really track the full loop as far as, you know, how are you treating patients currently? Are there different options and opportunities that you're missing out on? Not everyone's going to say yes, and that's okay to some of these things, but the ones that are accepted can really help generate some additional revenue for the practice that will kind of put you in better standing and help you provide better care.
Yeah, and that's part I find funny when somebody's had a clinic that's been established for 10 years and they go, oh, we're really quiet at the moment. If you've been around for 10 years and you've got thousands of patients, you shouldn't really be quiet. You should be digging into your database and finding out what services are my patients technically or potentially going somewhere else to get that treatment. And if you provide that, then you should be letting them know. Even if you might be quiet patient numbers, you should be busy with then your marketing towards your patients. Do the internal marketing.
No, absolutely. And that kind of like goes into the next point I was going to make is that not only do you have to have that flow with the patients and their knowledge and being educated, but you need to make sure your team has the systems in place to make it happen. If you don't have good workflows in the clinic, you're going to run into a lot of issues, right? This is where most practices can drop the ball. They add a service to their website. Maybe they run a few ads. Then a patient calls, interested in it, but nobody on the team knows how to handle the call. There was
Yeah.
no education of the staff. There's no script. There's no kind of easy payment workflow. There's no follow-up sequence. Some of these patients that are, fee for service have different expectations than if they were to be an insurance patient. So they're spending their own money and they want clarity, professionalism, and smooth experiences from the first phone call until the follow-up. So if your front desk is fumbling that first call, you've lost them and you probably won't even know it because they're not going to tell you that.
Yeah, but I've seen people at the front desk and say my podiatrist, because I'll be paying attention, and the patient walk in, and if it was someone that they knew, it was a regular patient, and the girls at the front would actually say to them, hey, Mary, yeah, how are you doing today? How are your feet been? And they go, oh, they've been really sore this morning. Oh, they've been really sore lately. If I overheard that conversation, as soon as they came in the room, I'd say, tell me more about what do you mean they've been really sore lately? I know you've got these corns here and callus in this area. Oh, when I get my ankles have been really painful. And these are the sort of things that if a receptionist is greeting a patient anyway and asking how they're doing or how their feet doing, just polite conversation, and the patient mentions anything, have a system, put it on a post-it note so the podiatrist knows to ask more questions about it. It's all
That's a
simple
great
stuff.
That's a great point. It's like kind of continuity of information, right? Like if someone asks them 3 different times how they're doing and they're probably getting more frustrated by the third time they're, being asked that question. So if there's a way to pass along a little bit of information so you feel like you've heard what's going on a little bit, it's going to make them feel like they've already been heard by those first 2 people and you're not just, obviously they're happy you're the doctor, they're willing to talk to you, but if you can ask them in a way where you feel like they feel like you already have a general sense of why they came in the first place, that's huge because like I talked about, the communication and educating that front desk is like, along with what you said, is hugely important about, when it comes to pricing, describing what the first visit's going to be like. They need to have a general sense of feeling welcomed, and by getting additional information, like you mentioned, you can really do that.
I remember a receptionist many years ago, it's before I was married. And this is how I know the receptionists, they talk with patients and they talk about different things. I remember picking up the patient file once and I grabbed the patient file and there's a post-it note on there and it said, single. And I just looked at the receptionist and the receptionist had a big grin on the face. It was quite an attractive young lady. And I tore the post-it note and threw it in the bin, went through the visit, said goodbye, and I said I said to the receptionist, you can't do that. You can't
Yeah.
point out if somebody is single. I said, I can't. You're not allowed. It's outside of the wheelhouse. You can't do that. She's like, oh, I just thought I'd let you know we were talking. She said that she was single. I'm going, but if they ask those sort of questions, then you can train them to ask better questions about
Sure.
the patient, and especially if there's nobody else around in the reception area, so they can actually have a bit more of an open conversation. If there's other patients there, you may not want to be asking those sort of things.
No, absolutely. And I think, when it comes to like some of these patients as well, and patients in general, we have Netflix now, we have Amazon Prime. So, everyone's kind of a retail consumer, even though they're
Yeah,
patients, they have all these retail experiences now that they're really thinking about, what is the experience like at the clinic, not necessarily like, you know, what the type of care they provide. That's the important part of it. So they're getting better, but like, what is the overall experience like? And this is where, follow up is something that, sometimes practices disappear on. A simple text 2 weeks post treatment can drive reviews. Like I said, like, giving a text message or, an email after a happy patient, this can lead to positive word of mouth and additional referrals. So, you have to be aware that like the stakes are even higher when it comes to patient expectations these days, especially if it's some fee for service care. So you want to make sure that you're making things as a smooth and wow experience as possible with these folks.
makes perfect sense. What's next?
I'd say the last point is to develop kind of the clinical confidence to present these different kind of treatment options. When people are first getting into their cash pay or kind of fee for service types of things, podiatrists went to school. A lot of them went to school just to take care of people, and anything that feels like kind of close to selling feels like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's not what I got into medicine for. I just
Do
want
you
to
reckon
make
that's
people
true
better.
though? Do you reckon that's true? Do you reckon
I think there's a lot
most
of people that are
podiatrists?
still like that. Yeah,
Do you reckon most podiatrists got in because I'm a caring person, I want to help people? Do you reckon that's why a lot got in?
I think a lot of people go to medicine that way, but they don't really realize that the power of persuasion and the ability to like talk to people about what's best for them is a
Yeah,
skill that has to be developed over time. So this is like I talked about, no one really likes to talk about that. It kills more kind of these fee for service revenue than anything else. Is that marketing failure? Is the kind of clinical confidence the doctor has. A lot of podiatrists feel uncomfortable presenting this because it feels like selling, like I said. But when you believe in the treatment, you've seen it work. It's presenting it, not selling, right? So it's good patient care. The patient is sitting in front of you with chronic plantar fasciitis. They deserve to know that shockwave therapy exists and that it might help. So if you don't tell them, they're either going to suffer or they're going to find someone else who's willing to treat them. So yeah, I think it's different for every podiatrist. I mean, there's some people that are more open to doing it and feel more comfortable doing it. But I know a lot of podiatrists that I've done it this way for 15 years, and now there's this new contraption out, and I just don't. It seems like they're either they're unwilling to change the way they practice, or they're finding kind of fault in the like selling the patient, as they like to say.
yeah. I don't think anyone, unless you're a born salesman, I don't think people like when they feel like they're trying to sell something. But I actually think if you feel like you're trying to sell something, then you probably don't believe in what it is that you're explaining.
Yeah.
Like I got into podiatry, and I'll be perfectly honest, I got into podiatry because I knew it made money. That's why I did it. I got in health. My whole goal is I'm going to get into healthcare because I'll never be unemployed, and I know I'll make above average money. I have no problems telling that to people. I didn't get into it because I'm a caring person. I
Right.
might be, I don't know. But I would never give something to a patient or explain something to a patient that I didn't think was going to help them. And if I happen to make money off the back end of it, then so be it. That's just the way life is. I didn't have a problem with that. So I think if people are explaining something to a patient and they feel, oh, uncomfortable, I feel like I'm a salesman, do you believe in what it is you're about to explain? And if you don't, then you're not a salesman, you're a con artist. If you do believe in what you're saying, then you're not a salesman, you're an educator and you're actually helping the patient. And that's what you should be doing. So you're either an educator or a con artist, depending on what the patient's needs are. That's a bit
Absolutely. Like you
harsh.
said, no, it's true. I think that's the way people see it. It's a kind of a polarizing thing at times. And
Yeah.
like you said, you're not upselling, you're informing, right? Patients can't choose the options they don't know about. So track, if you need more confidence, track the outcomes you have, with these different modalities, in your experience, looking at the literature, talking to colleagues. There's ways to, if you're still on the fence about something, there's ways to, figure out if something is right for you or not for you and kind of get off the fence. So you always want to frame it as options and not pressure, right? So, here's the conservative path. Here's a slower path that might work for you. And then there's another path that, I've had 70 to 80% improvement at a quicker rate with. So it's important to let them choose.
Yeah, I always remember a motivational speaker talking, I think it might have been Zig Ziglar back in the day. And he said the salesperson came in to sell him shares. Oh, well, some stocks and something. Oh, I should buy this. And was raving on about, they're great. You should do this. And it was a real precious sales thing. And Zig Ziglar turned around and said, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I'll have the same amount that you've got. He said, and the guy didn't have any, so he didn't sell any that day. That's a salesperson. But to me, if you wear orthotics yourself and you believe in orthotics and a patient needs orthotics, then you explain orthotics. If the patient says that they want them, you haven't sold it to them, you've educated them. If they say no, then you just move on to the next patient or give them another treatment option. Yeah, I don't know why people get hung up on it.
Yeah, it is one of those things, but you bring up some good points there. I think, we covered kind of these five pieces of the, fee for service puzzle that a lot of people sometimes are curious about. And, the number one, like I said, is knowing your marketing demographics. So you're, promoting the right services to the right people. Number two, you want to build those dedicated local pages that match, how patients are actually searching for you. And number three is mining your existing patient data to kind of find some ideal candidates for some of the treatments that they maybe don't know about you having. And also number four, building systems and workflows that give cash pay patients the kind of smooth experience they expect, because expectations have never been higher from a consumer standpoint, and medicine is no different. So, last but not least, you want to develop that clinical confidence to present these options consistently, because no matter how much marketing you do, if the conversation never happens in the exam room, they're never going to know that that's a potential option for them. So I would say, this week, pick out one newer service that you've thought about offering or introducing, pulling up some, census data about the maybe three or four other zip codes around your clinic. Look at the age and kind of income demographics of the people in your local area. And this might be a good chance to make some more tactical marketing decisions that are based off of more than just like, oh, I got a website. Oh, I got Google ads. Being a little more tactical by knowing these demographics can be really, really helpful.
Love this topic today. This is good.
And if you want to even dig deeper, Tyson and I offer something for folks now called the Practice Visibility Scorecard. So if you want to see, 5-10 mile radius around where your clinic is at, for different types of, what's orthotics or bunion surgery or podiatrist, go over to podiatry.marketing, our website. At the very top of the page, there's a way to get a free practice visibility scorecard. And, we can really help you out there to see, which demographics you should be going after and where those opportunities lie in your local area.
It is fantastic, Jim. So if people need that, repeat the website one more time.
You have to go to podiatry.marketing. They can either just check out the top of the page. There's a link there, and they can get their own free practice visibility scorecard.
Okay, that is fantastic. Okay, Big Jim, I look forward to talking again next week.
Sounds great, Tyson.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
Bye now.